Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Health Huddles with AARP Illinois and the Illinois Department of Public Health. I'm Courtney Hederman. I'm the Senior Associate State Director for AARP Illinois, and we're thrilled to have you all with us and join us today. Our focus for our Health Huddles this month is actually overcoming caregiver stress. Boy, is this a big one, right? So we have lots to talk about. Before we really get diving into questions and all sorts of fun stuff, just want to give us a little lay of the land. So, did you know that family caregivers provide an astonishing $600 billion worth of unpaid labor each year nationally? They manage medications, prepare meals, assist with bathing, feeding, dressing, provide transportation to medical appointments, handle financial legal matters, and really honestly so much more even than just that, which is a whole bunch, right? So caregiving is an unpaid family labor force that consists of 1.3 million family caregivers here in Illinois, and they provide a staggering 1.21 billion care hours per year. So just think about that. This unpaid labor is valued over $21 billion. So don't want to mess that one up. $21 billion annually. So with caregivers facing an average out-of-pocket cost of over $7,200 per year in the United States. That is all staggering numbers and figures, if you ask me. Now, what's even more remarkable is that many of these caregivers are also juggling full-time jobs, often being forced to reduce, their hours or quit even entirely, so they can care for their loved ones. The physical, emotional, and financial toll of family caregivers is really enormous. So today is our special focus on caregiving and the support available to seniors and caregivers. We want to make sure everyone feels good as much as possible and gets all the resources they need. So to shed light on this very important topic, we have two very esteemed guests with me today, and I'm so very proud to work with them. They are leaders in this area. So we have Dr. Catherine Counard. She is the Preventive Medicine Medical Advisor for the Illinois Department of Public Health. And we have Amy Brennan, the Executive Director of the Illinois Family Caregiver Coalition. So welcome, Dr. Counard, and welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so it is Caregiver Month as well. This is when we are actually even spotlighting caregivers. So this is literally a perfect timing to talk about this. So let's dive in. But before we do, just want to a little housekeeping. Want to remind everyone that's watching via Facebook or our YouTube. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, because as we go along, happy to get those questions answered that you might have, and certainly would love comments as well. So don't be alarmed. Please put those in the chat so we can see all that, and we will absolutely do our best to address anything that you might have a question about. Okay, so let's just kick off and get started. Okay, so I'll start with Amy first. Amy, caregivers really often put their own needs aside, right? They are caring for maybe even more than one person, but regardless, how can caregivers really recognize when they need to prioritize that self-care and really think about their own well-being too?
Yes, thank you, Courtney. And first of all, thank you. Hats off to you and AARP for all the great things that you guys are doing to support caregivers, and Dr. Counard too. Thank you for leading us through so much during COVID. So it's a pleasure to be here, and great timing too, Courtney, because as we head into Thanksgiving, and there's so much out there about gratitude, and certainly there is gratitude from the point of view of a caregiver, and as from personal experience as a working caregiver. A handful of years ago, gratitude certainly is there to be able to care for our loved ones, but it's not all gratitude. And so I hope today can be kind of about hope and, letting folks know that you can do this, you can get through this. So just quickly, 3 resources, the best resources that I would definitely highly recommend. One, AARP website is fantastic. You guys have a great caregiver section in the AARP website. So I know that's something maybe we can add to the chat later. Second, I would say I know most of the audience is Illinois, but there's probably folks also you mentioned that could be from around the country. So I just wanted to mention a great network of they call them area agencies on aging. And here in Illinois, I'm most familiar with them because they helped start the Illinois Family Caregiver Coalition, but they are all over the country. And so we're also going to add a couple resources, links in the chat. One will be for the Illinois Area Agencies on Aging, and it's real easy to figure out which one is the best one for you. These are things that are, no cost to you. These are folks that can help you. So there'll be a map in the link that leads you to whichever county you live in. It's easy to match up which one is your area agency on aging. And then also, if you're not from Illinois, we are including a link to the Elder Care Locator, which does the same thing for you in other states. And lastly, I would say what we're using here in Illinois to try to help you help pinpoint where the stress points are. There's a great tool, and it's evidence-based. It's one of the few evidence-based options out there. It's called Tailored Care Assessment. And what this does, it helps identify pain points for the caregiver. So it's really about you. I mean, so much of when you go to the doctor's offices is, of course, about the loved one, but this is about you and trying to pinpoint what the stress is that's going on for you in your life. And we're also going to add a link to T-Care too, but the area agencies on aging here in Illinois can help lead you through that and guide you after the assessment to what is needed most. So I hope that helps.
Oh, that's great. Those are all wonderful resources. I can't think of anything better. These are all fantastic. So everyone, please check the chat for these multiple resources that will absolutely help you. Okay, so Dr. Counard, okay, so caregiving obviously can also be very rewarding. But obviously it can be very stressful. And we've already talked a little bit about how that is. So what do you think are the common stressors that caregivers face? And really, how can we best, help them and help them cope with them?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks again for inviting me. I'm really very grateful to be here today to have this opportunity to speak with everyone. One of the main stressors for family caregivers is uncertainty. And it's the same type of uncertainty that's experienced by people who have a sudden life-altering illness. There's a sense of loss of control or a perpetual state of not knowing what the future holds. And this is especially true for family members caring for loved ones with dementia, who may spend years providing ever-increasing levels of care. The symptoms of dementia, such as agitation, confusion, inability to speak, poor judgment, and lack of attention to hygiene, are stressful and become worse over time, and caregivers often don't know how to manage. Also, as you alluded to earlier, Courtney, the many hours required for caregiving can make it quite difficult for caregivers to maintain their own social relationships, career, and even employment, adding potential financial strain to the list of concerns. In addition to these challenges, it's normal to experience a sense of loss and grief when caring for someone with dementia. The loss of your personal freedom that I mentioned earlier, and the interpersonal loss of what was likely a deeply meaningful relationship. So caregivers can gain a sense of empowerment and control during these challenging moments by learning all they can about their loved one's condition, the anticipated course of the illness, strategies for managing, and services that are available. Being prepared can help you recognize and act upon things when they appear. And it's important for caregivers to seek help from their healthcare provider, family members and friends, support groups and organizations, as Amy mentioned. I also want to put a plug in for the Department on Aging website, where there's an extensive list of resources, including links to trainings for caregivers and contact information for the area agencies on aging in Illinois that Amy mentioned.
Yeah, these are great. Thank you so much for again, all this really valuable information. And I really can relate to kind of feeling the loss and grief in some ways. Like when you have a really great relationship, like I can look at my own mom. I have a great relationship with her. She's 80, she's doing great, but I even catch myself kind of losing the patience. And it's mostly because I'm like, wait a minute, you have done so much more. You've been so much more independent, and losing some of those things and kind of seeing some of the decline, it's heartbreaking. And it tests the patience in a different way than I ever expected I would ever handle this. And I think it's totally normal. And I hear that from other caregivers too, like, gosh, even my mom is, I'm caring for my mom, and she was the nicest woman in the world, and now she's like mean. She's just downright mean. And so, it's feeling all of those things that you have to ultimately handle and deal with. It's really tough. It's really, really tough to put into words. But thank you so much. Okay, so Amy, let's go back to you. So, obviously, again, we're talking about this caregiver stress. And so how does caregiver stress really impact the emotional well-being of the individuals in the caregiving role? And Dr. Counard made reference to some of these, but I think we should, continue to extrapolate on it. So what are some of the common emotional challenges that caregivers face?
Yep, no, it's a great question, and you're right. Dr. Counard did a great job of kind of going through them, and I would definitely highlight, something that she talked about, the anger, and then I would say kind of what comes with it. Then usually quickly follows is the guilt. You feel guilty for being angry, and whether it's with your loved one or sometimes family members, even, you're trying to everybody balance, and everybody's got busy lives, and you're trying to do it, and you're trying to do it in the most graceful way. But, when you lose your patience, then there's the anger. Another dynamic that I would mention that we're finding as we're working with these assessments to help caregivers is something called identity discrepancy that they're finding with caregivers, and what that means is that, so I, like, when I was caregiving for my mother or my father, and while I was blessed and she was in a great facility, I know there's a lot of caregivers out there where they're doing it on their own, and they might have really involved medical medical treatments that they need to help with their family members, their loved ones at home. And so often if the stress really grows, they call it an identity discrepancy, where they often more feel like a nurse rather than a daughter or a son or a spouse or a partner. And so that apparently, in these assessments, the idea is to try to seek help before it really gets hard and bad. But that apparently that is something that, just something to look out for, that when you start to really feel like, you're on the clock here rather than a loved one, that's something that I know is kind of a flag.
That's so true. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I think that is such a common and really kind of natural, organic thing that happens. Whether they want, you certainly don't want that to happen, but I think it's a natural thing that occurs. So I think that's really important to share with folks. So Dr. Counard, as we're talking about the kind of the emotional side, but like kind of switching to the behavioral changes. So I think there's some specific behaviors that caregivers kind of really should be aware of of themselves as they're, caring for someone, like particularly as it relates to stress. And so what are those potential indicators of caregiver stress that people need to be, aware of and just really understanding more so they can then get whatever help they might need to?
Sure. Very good question. Learning to recognize the signs of stress and burnout is important so you can prevent things from becoming worse, as Amy was alluding to, and improve the situation for both you and the person you're caring for. So some of the signs and symptoms of burnout and chronic stress are trouble concentrating. You have much less energy than you once had. Feeling tired, run down, having difficulty sleeping. You're constantly exhausted, even after sleeping or taking a break. Anxiety, depression, irritability. You're increasingly impatient and irritable with the person you're caring for, overreacting potentially to minor nuisances. New or worsening health problems, drinking, smoking, or eating more, cutting back on leisure activities. You neglect your own needs either because you're too busy or you don't care anymore. Feeling increasingly resentful, your life revolves around caregiving, but it gives you little satisfaction, and neglecting responsibilities because you feel hopeless and helpless. If you recognize any of these signs, it's important to get help and not let caregiving take over your whole existence. Ask family members and friends for assistance. Look into respite care so you're able to spend some time on things that you find enjoyable, hobbies, coffee with a friend, simply getting out of the house for a walk. And also think of ways to reframe your situation. Accepting the situation as it is difficult, but it can be very releasing for you to recognize that this is the situation and we have to deal with reality as it is. And then reflecting on the meaningful motivations that have led you to care for your loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of continuing that and piggybacking off of what you just shared, I think stress can just do really bad things to the body. And so if you have chronic stressors, right, like caregiving, I think that, you hear a lot that, the caregiver becomes very sick and they have additional, perhaps own health problems. And so can you talk a little bit about some of those, if you have prolonged stress, what are some of those health implications that happen or can happen to someone?
Yeah, absolutely. Our bodies are made to react to stress and ways to protect ourselves against threats. And we've all heard this called the fight or flight response. And that causes a surge of hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol in your body. Adrenaline can make your heart beat faster, your blood pressure go up, and it also gives you energy so you can run away. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, increases the sugar or glucose in your bloodstream, which gives energy to your muscles so you can fight or run, flight. And it also slows down functions that would be non-essential if you were in a life-threatening situation with a predator back in the day. But digestion, for instance, can be impacted and slowed down when you're under stress. The fight or flight response is designed to turn off once the threat is past. But now, in today's time, the challenge is when stressors are always present and you always feel under attack, this stress response stays turned on. In the long-term activation of the stress response system, too much exposure to cortisol and adrenaline can disrupt almost all of your body's processes. So this puts you at higher risk of health problems, as Courtney was mentioning, anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, muscle tension and pain, heart disease, heart attack, high blood pressure, stroke, sleep problems, weight gain, and problems with memory and focus. So if you're feeling that you're constantly under stress, it's important to take steps to manage the stress and take care of your own health. Staying on top of medical visits, consider discussing your situation with your doctor who can help you get connected to community resources and support. Try getting some regular exercise if you can, 30 minutes on most days, because exercise, even if you don't feel like doing it afterwards, usually it's a powerful stress reliever and mood enhancer. Paying attention to what you're eating, getting plenty to drink, staying hydrated, not skimping on sleep, and then practicing some relaxation techniques such as yoga or meditation are other strategies to reduce stress and help you feel more in control with greater energy and less fatigue.
I love that. I was going to ask you a question. Is it related to like, what can people do? And you just gave all these wonderful, wonderful suggestions. I love it. That's perfect. Perfect. I think we could all use any of those things, frankly, and feel better for ourselves. So that's great. Okay. So Amy, turning to you, obviously we were just talking about the physical side, but let's talk about the emotional roller coaster that caregivers feel and kind of more the mental health side of it. Because actually we've already been talking about just kind of the feelings of guilt sometimes and just frustrations, but also joy and fulfillment that actually caregivers experience. So can we talk a little bit about our mental health as we are caregiving?
Yep. No, Courtney, it's great. And I think, like you said, Dr. Counard did such a good job of describing it, and describing, some of the mental health challenges that can come with it. And I guess what I would say is even just taking a step back, that, I just remember that when I was a caregiver, and this is something that is happens often, and it's one of the reasons we started this Family Caregiver Coalition. And I think all of us are focusing so much on supporting the family caregiver, is that we often don't think of ourselves, as a caregiver. I know when my mother was in a great long-term care facility, if somebody would have walked down the hall and said, "Hey, we're having a meeting, we want the caregiver there," I would have turned right around and pointed at, the angel nurses and doctor teams that were there, that, you are a caregiver, and all of these things, impact you. There's all this great data. And I didn't know that when you're in the thick of it, you're researching things that are specific maybe to your loved one. But I didn't realize all of this data, that you're not alone. So I think the main message we want to tell folks is you're not alone. This is a real thing. And so it's not weakness to reach out to these number of resources that we're going to give you. So the Department on Aging has a great 1-800 hotline. Alzheimer's Association has a fantastic 24/7 hotline. There's something called Illinois Pathways to Health that focuses on the well-being of both caregivers and the loved one. And then also at the area agencies on aging, they have classes that you can take, I think virtual and in person, called the Savvy Caregiver and Stress Busters. So I would just recommend to people, lean on the friend, lean on the ones that say, "Hey, what can I do to help?" They mean it. So this is the time to lean on friends and family.
I love it. Yep. I was going to ask about all those local resources you just gave. This is awesome. Again, make sure everybody is checking that chat, because we'll be adding all of these resources if they're not in there already. And, interestingly enough, I had a question that was related to kind of, when you're kind of feeling the burden or the challenge and you're feeling like you're on an island by yourself. We have a tremendous amount of folks that are watching on Facebook and YouTube, but our YouTube especially right now, there are a tremendous amount of folks that are sharing their stories and experiences, which I really commend all of you for doing. And please continue to share your story, because I think that helps not only kind of letting some of that stress go, but you're helping someone else who might be even, just starting out in their journey. So thank you to everybody who's continuing to, to share their story. Appreciate all of you. And we've had a couple of questions as it relates to, how to kind of overcome the lack of help from siblings or friends or family. Because again, you're feeling perhaps you're kind of on your own, and they are experiencing some of that where they're kind of doing it all by themselves. And so any advice for our folks out there who have that kind of situation, they're kind of getting a lack of help from people who they thought they would maybe help, like, again, a sibling. So I'll give it to both of you. I think you probably have really good advice for both of us. I don't know who wants to go first.
Do you have any suggestions?
Sure. Yes. No, it's a great question, and definitely prevalent. Definitely here. It comes up quite often, and I can also relate. There were two things that I would say. One is, they say to, as much as possible, sometimes folks, you want to give folks the benefit of the doubt, and maybe they don't know how they can help. And so, trying to maybe making a list of, these are all the things that we need, and they're not aware of all the things that you're doing. So maybe making a list, and maybe you want to enlist like the social worker, or folks, some of the professionals that are involved, to kind of make a care plan meeting. I would say that's number one. And then number two is sometimes it just isn't going to get through, or maybe they really do have, they're out of state, they have full families, they can't. So I'll tell you the two words that just were mantras in my head throughout the time. And it was either, depending on what was going on in the day, the two words were strength and grace. And strength to kind of barrel through and to just, do everything I could for my mother and for my loved one. And then the other were the times that maybe were so, fed up and wondering why people didn't see, and that was when grace would come in. And I would kind of call on those two words. Those were my two mantras that I would call on throughout the time. I don't know if that helps.
No, I think that totally helps. Dr. Counard, did you have any additional comments?
I think Amy's suggestion to give specific things, even for people who are far away. What could they do to help? Can they help call the healthcare provider about a bill or other things, maybe help manage finances remotely, interact on those kinds of opportunities to provide support would be a way that even someone who's in another state or far away can help. So giving people a specific idea. And then also, I think what I see happening sometimes is that someone will have offered to help and said, the caregiver might at that point have said, oh, I'm good, everything's fine. And then that other person doesn't ask again, and so then a little different than siblings who I think you're probably communicating with regularly to ask for their help and support. But ask them, let them know, hey, remember when you asked me, I didn't need anything then, but this is how you could help me now. And having some idea of what you can do. You don't have to do everything, and how other people could help you, looking for tasks that other people might be able to help you with.
Yep. No, I love that. I can relate to this too. I have a brother who he's just, I would say, not just medically intuitive and not really just jumps in. And I'm a doer, right? I just jump in. No one has to tell me what to do. I just do it. And I think that there are people, there are the doers, which I think are a lot of caregivers. They're doers, they're doing it. And then there's people, again, maybe a sibling, a friend, family, other family member, and they kind of have to almost be delegated something because they just don't know what to do. And sometimes when you don't know what to do, you're paralyzed. Like you don't do anything then. And it's not because they might not even not want to help. They just don't know what to do and they need to. And I will say, like, my brother's not going to be the one who, does certain things for my mom, but he is a very good person to like help around the house. Like, you know what? Wow, the light bulb is out. And I know that sounds so trite to say like, oh, well, okay. But if he's changing a light bulb or he's fixing the toilet or going and getting a prescription, like that's something that I don't have to do. So there might be things that you don't even think about that you might need help with that are super easy tasks that somebody else is either can do or even better at, that can, again, alleviate any stress or any to-do task that you have on that list for the day, right? And giving that to that person, that delegation, I think is so, it'll help you and it'll make that other person be involved no matter what. So just, a couple additional tips there that I've experienced myself.
And Courtney, if I could just add something that is really hitting home from the events that you guys are hosting, the caregiver conversations, and those two to-dos are building your team, really, not just looking at the family and really looking, elsewhere. So how many other folks can help? So I love that suggestion, building your team, and then also going back to the self-care that, sometimes I would find myself so stressed and so angry at someone who a family member or someone, and I would, if I could take a step back and go, get that cup of coffee or go walk around the block or walk my dog or try meditation or yoga, often sometimes that stuff would kind of, I could just let it go.
Yep, I love that. Absolutely. This is wonderful. Okay, so I can't believe this has gone so very fast. We're already basically at our 30 minutes. So just to kind of just thinking in closing, what message would each of you give to share to our viewers about the importance of caregiving? And I know we've talked a lot about resources, but any other resources that you think of or you certainly want to, hit home or reiterate in Illinois or of course, nationally. So Dr. Counard, I'll start with you and then Amy will send it to you at the end.
Sure. I just wanted to share a concluding thought from Scott Rose, who many of you might have heard speak about how he cared for his wife, Maureen, through her dementia diagnosis. And he wrote, "Carry on. Carry the things you need and let go of the things you don't. Guilt, shame, anger, resentment, let it go. Those things don't make your trip any easier. Love lifts us up." He wrote, "I remember in my most overwhelming caregiving times, I would see something in Maureen that would remind me of the importance of just being there in that moment. That love would slowly ease the stress. You are doing well and carry on."
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. Amy, any other final comments?
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I love that too. And it's, I mean, again, back to this, the strength and grace kind of thing, and don't, forget the self-care. And also, if you know folks that are caregiving, whether they're folks from work or whether they are loved ones, offer to do something, and not just like a, hey, let me know if you need anything, but a concrete thing. Offer like, hey, I noticed these are 3 things, like you're not able to get home often enough to walk your dog, or do you need, can I help you pick up your kids from school, or can I help get a meal for you, and start a meal train with friends. So I would say, just lean on the people. That's what, lean on friends and family. That's what they're there for. And I love the strength and grace. Just that's what helped get me through. And like Dr. Counard said, kind of, one step at a time, and carry through. And you will never regret it. That's one last thing I would want to say. I will never regret looking back on it. I mean, yes, some of it was scary. How am I going to keep my job? How am I going to keep pay? Getting money in the door while I'm doing this. But it's something that I will never regret doing, spending that time with my mother the last, few months that she was alive.
Oh, thank you so very much. Thank you both. Okay, so I want to extend a very heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guests, Dr. Catherine Counard from the Illinois Department of Public Health, and then Amy Brennan, the Executive Director of the Illinois Family Caregiver Coalition, for sharing their expertise and insights with us. Appreciate all of you. So thank you to everyone who has joined us for Health Huddles with AARP and the Illinois Department of Public Health, focusing on overcoming caregiver stress. I learned so much, and I feel so very hopeful. So I so appreciate this conversation. It really was enlightening, and we again appreciate both of your participation today. So as we close the event, I just want to take a moment to recognize the extraordinary, dedicated love of family caregivers, and that the care that is provided every single day. Really, your selfless efforts really make it possible for your loved ones to maintain their independence and dignity, and just appreciate you. So love to all of our caregivers out there. For those that are looking for more resources on caregiving, you can again find that a lot of resources that we talked about in the chat. Want to certainly highlight the Department on Aging's website, ilaging.illinois.gov. And of course, AARP has a tremendous amount of resources under this as well. AARP caregiving site, aarp.org/caregiving. Please take advantage of these resources. They're there. We want everyone to be helped if they need help. And if you need to help navigate through this journey that you're on, we want you to know that you are not alone. So again, please help. We are here to help you. Once again, thank you again for being with us today. We look forward to continuing our mission of supporting seniors, caregivers, and of course, our entire aging community in Illinois and beyond. We are so happy that you were with us. Thank you so very much again. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Be well. And of course, I think Dr. Counard, you said it best, carry on. So carry on, everyone. Thank you so much.
Happy Family Caregivers Month, November.
Yes,
Thank you.
Caregivers Month. Yes.
Thank you
so
Courtney.
very much, everyone.
Thank you.